Las Vegas Sportsline is owned and produced by Vegas Sportsline, LLC. All opinions expressed by the hosts or guests are their own and are not endorsed by either radio station management or any of its advertisers.
It's the Las Vegas Sportsline.
And welcome aboard as we start the Wednesday edition of the Las Vegas Sportsline. We are right here at Lotus Broadcasting today. Teddy Covers is here from Sports Memo and Wager Talk. Patrick Everson, Covers.com is with us. Jared Justice is doing the production. I'm Dave Cokin, and what do we talk about? Well, let's start with the Super Bowl. Kind of a big game. No, wait a minute. Let's hold off on that because I'm a baseball guy. And we got to talk about this because it finally happened. We have our first ever unanimous selection to the Hall of Fame. It is the all-time leading closer from the New York Yankees, Mariano Rivera, and Teddy Covers is unhappy about it.
It shouldn't be unanimous. It can't be unanimous. Mariano Rivera single-handedly cost the Yankees 2 titles. Not one. D-backs, Game 7. That's Mariano costing you a title, flat out. Red Sox, 2004, Games 4 and 5. Rivera blew a couple in that series, if I remember correctly.
Oh, you remember correct?
Yeah. And Boston, by the way, and Rivera blowing both those saves ended my single favorite chant of all time, which was the 1918. They used to be able to chant to the Red Sox, which was so much fun. 4 titles. He created that. So not that he's not a Hall of Famer.
Right.
Not that he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. But unanimous? No. I would have been the guy that didn't vote for him.
I will admit I am shocked that he is that somebody finally got in unanimously. Mm-hmm. I mean, I thought this was going to go on forever. So I'm happy from this standpoint. Maybe we can get rid of this nonsense now where some idiot leaves Greg Maddux off the ballot.
Well, I'd have been the idiot that left Rivera off the ballot, but no idiots did this time around.
Patrick?
Well, look, I'm with you on that. I mean, if Greg Maddux is not unanimous, then really, who is, and how do you leave him off the? I mean, just leave him off the ballot,
so many.
let alone unanimous.
I just brought up Greg Maddux.
No, I agree.
Seaver, Willie Mays,
sure,
Babe Ruth,
exactly. Going back,
come on,
Hank Aaron.
Going back, decades and decades and decades. How are some of these people not unanimous? And it's just some of these media members and voters with a stick up their rear end.
We know why the very first one was
the sanctity of the
first
game.
Ones were Cobb and Ruth, who weren't unanimous, I guess, and that was strictly because Cobb was a thoroughly unlikable individual.
Sure.
And there were some writers, with a stick up their butt that didn't like the fact that Babe Ruth used to celebrate basically everything. So,
before, during, and after games.
Yes. But the whole thing. It's the most ridiculous tradition of all time. So at least Mariano has ended that.
Yeah, but nonetheless, baseball's all about. I mean, what does baseball have? It doesn't have traditions.
I know.
I mean, that's what baseball is. It's okay. Your dad liked it, and this is how we do it, and these are the tradition. And the tradition is, you don't have anybody get all the votes. And when you look, I mean, if you read Jeff Passan's column today I did not on ESPN, he's talking. He's going through, it was about Bonds and Clemens and the guys that didn't vote for Bonds and Clemens. And he was interviewing some of them. And just in that brief article talking about the guys who are actually making the votes for the Hall of Fame, they're not they're not modern baseball writers.
Oh, no. It's the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Octogenarian.
Yeah.
I mean, they're A, ancient, and B, don't know anything about baseball.
The guy who cracked me up was a few years ago when
how do they get the ballots?
When Ricky
how did these guys get the ballots?
Because they're lifers. It's basically like a Supreme Court nomination. Once you're in, you stay in, buddy. That's it. You're in until you either retire or die.
Yeah, but there's guys. There's a writer for the American Heart Association who has a ballot for the. There's the hockey writers that have ballots for the baseball.
There was a guy a few years ago from Arizona who didn't vote for Ricky Henderson and clearly didn't know who he was.
Sure,
he didn't know.
That's
who he
who's
was.
making the decisions.
Yeah, they need to get some of the sharper analytics writers in.
Doesn't matter.
Or broadcast. And by the way, it doesn't have to be writers. Why wouldn't Brian Kenny be qualified to have a vote? Are you kidding? I mean, you might not agree with everything Brian Kenny says. I don't. Or Keith Olbermann, for instance, he's a baseball savant. So you might not agree with them on specific opinions they have, but I think they're qualified to have a ballot.
Sure, far more qualified than 90% of the 95% of the people, and equal to the other 5%. But when you think about how many modern analytics guys it would take to even shift the paradigm a little bit, because it's hundreds and hundreds and
they've
hundreds.
shifted the paradigm because there are guys getting in now on analytics that didn't get in previously. They would never have gotten in previously. That has started to shift because they're at least getting some younger writers in now, and some of the old guys, probably like the guy from Arizona who didn't know who Ricky Anderson was, have died off. All right. Anyway, no, look, I'm in the age group now where it's okay for me to say that. Once you're past 65, anything goes. You can say whatever you want, and pretty much if it's an outrageous thing that you said, you can attribute it to old age. I mean, if I say something completely sexist on the air, I'm not going to today, but at some point I probably will. And I'm just going to, he's from that generation.
A different era.
Yeah, he's from a different era. Yeah. He's an old geezer. All right, old geezer or not, time to talk Super Bowl and about that old geezer who's leading the Patriots into their 9th Super Bowl since he got there. What? 9 Super Bowls? Tom Brady 5-3. Could be 3-5, but the fact is he's 5-3. And I've commented on this each of the past 2 days, and we'll bring it up again. And I want to get feedback from you guys. And Patrick, maybe you can offer some feedback on why it went this way at the books. I tweeted at halftime of the Patriots-Chiefs game, right line for the Super Bowl, Patriots -2. Mm-hmm. I'm right. I was right. The number they put up was not a good number. And it's gotten to where it's supposed to be now. Should have been there in the first place.
I was leaning that way, too, because people were asking me even, like I said, in the first half and at halftime, okay, what do you think? And I thought, first off, Patriots favored for sure, is what I thought. But, the odds makers were looking at it a little bit differently, and maybe
they went with the analytics power rating, which was Rams -1.5.
Yeah,
that's my number.
Yeah, the base power number, I had the Rams a half point better than New England.
But this is the Super Bowl, and you don't line this like any other game. And, I mean, it's not going to make or break them, obviously. They're going to get a ton of money on both sides in this game. But it did open the door for some big bets really quickly on New England, and that number moved very rapidly, and that's money that moved the line.
Yeah, MGM Books got a 6-figure bet within 30 minutes. And that was not necessarily getting the best of the number either. In fact, it wasn't.
Right.
By that time, the Patriots were already favored. So, it was definitely interesting how each book came out. There were only 3 or 4, I think, that actually went with Rams -1. Everybody else waited a few minutes.
They were the ones who wanted to get the jump.
Right.
That's good bookmaking to me, too, is get that early action through the window.
And the Superbook did that, and CG Technology did that. And then both of the new enterprises, with more of the online presence, DraftKings and FanDuel, both of them also came in -1. Now, they all had to move in a big hurry, but those were the first to market, and they all decided to go -1.
And yet we've seen resistance the
Rams
other way
-1,
as well.
I'm sorry.
I mean, where the line opened was clearly not factoring in the public sentiment.
Right.
Because there's
Which
a
you have to
recency
do in the
bias.
Super Bowl.
And this is the one game in any sport all year where the public legitimately influences where the point spread's going to be.
It's also the one game I handicap. In my handicapping, I just toss the value. I don't care about it. This is a game where you have to try and handicap the game and pick the winner.
Well, this is a game that all you do is take the underdog and you cash every ticket. I mean, look at the Super Bowl the last 10 years.
Way, yeah.
Not running that way. There's been one favorite to cover the last 10 years in the Super Bowl, and I had them, and it was the wrong side. It was Green Bay against Pittsburgh, and remember Mendenhall's fumble? Steelers are on the way to win that game, and Mendenhall doesn't fumble
Patriots
away.
covered as a favorite against Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but that in regulation,
okay,
New
they
England
shouldn't
did
have
not
covered.
cover.
They shouldn't have won the
yes,
game,
yeah.
but they did.
Yeah, and some spots had the Patriots -1 against Seattle. That was a pick'em. I grade that as a pick'em. But when a favorite covers in overtime,
yep.
I grade that as a loss in my database. That's a loss. As opposed to a win for the Chalk. So that's why I was thinking of it in that regard. But that's the only favorite that is covered in regulation in the last decade.
Could well stay that way.
Is the Packers beating the Steelers?
No question, the Rams have a chance to keep that stretch of underdog winners intact. Has anything slowed down? And let's talk about props that are showing up, although the bulk will be showing up in the next couple of days, Patrick.
Yeah, exactly. It slowed down a little, but I was talking about this with Eric Osterman at the Superbook. I was literally in the Superbook just before I drove over here. He said it's just been a deluge of Patriots money along with some market movement. And he said if the game were played, now or this weekend, we'd all be pretty nervous about it. But that said, it's not being played now. They've got a lot of time, and as you guys point out, there's going to be plenty of money on both sides. As far as props, obviously the huge Superbook sheet packet, dictionary, whatever you want to call it, comes out Thursday night, tomorrow night. But
there's already a line outside the door at the Superbook.
Yeah, exactly. And there are plenty of props up already at books all around town, including Superbook. And Eric said MVP is always the one that gets a lot of money. It's popular among the public. And he said we've got quite a few bets on everybody, pretty spread out. A lot. They got a pretty long list of potential MVPs. But the three ones drawing the most action: James White, Patriots running back, 40-1; Todd Gurley, Rams running back, 16-1. He said, thinking the opposite way, thinking back 2-3 years ago to what Von Miller did against Carolina, quite a few tickets on Aaron Donald at 25-1.
A little surprised on Gurley because I don't think he's healthy. I mean, he carried the ball 3 times in the last game.
And fumbled.
Yeah. I just don't think he's – I know the swelling in the knee is going down, but something isn't right.
But they don't need him. It's not like Gurley's been a difference maker for the Rams down the stretch. It's been C.J. Anderson who was the difference maker for the Rams down the stretch. They go, he doesn't have Gurley's explosiveness. Gurley's longest rush for the season is 35 yards. Anderson's, I think, is 46. So for all of the talk of Todd Gurley being this explosive, dynamic, playmaking weapon, he's a great pass catcher. He's a better pass
who knows
catcher
physics would understand why, because bowling balls pick up a lot of speed as they're rolling along. And he's a bowling ball right now. What happened? That guy, he must have been eating really good, or eat really well, I should say, while he was on hiatus, because he's bigger than he was before. And it's working for him, Anderson.
Sure, work for Jerome Bettis. Yeah. It's not like the big backs have no history of, work for LeGarrette Blount, and for that matter.
Well, something worked for UNLV last night, and that was 3-point shooting. Mm-hmm. Wow. 14 for 23 for the Rebels as they earned the series sweep with an impressive win over New Mexico. Very good performance by the Rebels. And, look, I like being wrong when it comes to UNLV. And my prediction preseason for them to be around 7th or 8th in the Mountain West looks like it's going to be way short of where they might end up. They've only got one loss right now. They're tied for the conference lead. Doesn't mean they're the best team in the league, but what it does mean is that maybe there's a glimmer of hope to get to the NIT, which would be a big win for this team if they could get to the NIT.
Yeah, sure. I was at the Thomas and Mack last night, and the game's tied at 18, and all of a sudden, the Rebels started raining threes. It was back to back to back, and then it's 27-18, and then it's a double-digit lead, and defensively, where I was really impressed last night was UNLV's defense. I mean, yeah, it was a night where the shots were falling, but they didn't give up anything in transition to the Lobos, and they really didn't give up many good looks in the half court either. Nothing in the low post. All the perimeter looks for New Mexico were guarded fairly well. Rebels hit their threes last night to win by margin, but the game was won on the defensive end of the floor.
And the books, I think, did well on this game because it appeared, Patrick, as though there was some New Mexico money showing up in anticipation that they would be the revenge side. Plus points, that usually attracts bettors, and it did in this case. I think the locals are probably on the Rebels, but the bigger bets seem to be on the Lobos. Yeah, definitely. This was another one I talked about with Eric Osterman just a little while ago, and he said we were getting a lot of New Mexico money, not a whole lot of faith in the Rebels. The Rebels, he pointed out, have had a key injury or two as well. He said, so that one was a good game for us, even though the home team wins and covers. In this case, the Rebels were not drawing the cash here. Big game in the NHL tonight here at T-Mobile. We'll talk about that game in our marquee matchup later on as the Golden Knights play host to the Nashville Predators, with each team heading into the All-Star break looking to get there on a winning note. Meanwhile, we'll crank up today's Wednesday MJ Christensen 4 at 4.
1, 2, 3 into the 4.
Put the fours up. Put the fours up, I said. Do it right now.
Tonight's action is just around the bend, and the guys want to get your night off to a great start.
4.
It's the Las Vegas Sportsline's 4 at 4.
Not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4. Unbelievable.
And we got started in the Big East with a couple of teams that would really like to get a win here. Providence College on the road at Xavier. It has been a struggle for both teams.